And joining us now is Dave Ehrenberg, State Attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. Dave, it's always a pleasure to see you. This occurred in your jurisdiction. You said that the suspect will now face federal, not state charges. Why?
Yeah, good to be with you, Jose.
Likewise.
So originally we were going to pursue state charges. We were doing the warrants, processing them. We were going to request pretrial detention, but it really was a stopgap to make sure that this guy doesn't get out of jail. When the feds came in after the press conference yesterday and said they were going to assert jurisdiction, we said, great, we stood down. That's normal. When the feds want to take a case, we defer to them. There are no turf wars here.
Hey, Dave, take us back, if you would, to your extraordinary professional depth and knowledge and your vocation of service. What are the steps that are carried on behind the scenes when something like this occurs? You're intricately involved in it. Can you take us a little bit behind what happened and what you learned, how you learned it, and the steps that were taken by officials?
And thank you for your nice words about my service, Jose. I'm on this job for another 3 months. The sheriff here, Rick Bradshaw, does an excellent job. You saw him at the press conference yesterday. He was really the coordinator in this. We met with him in his mobile unit, mobile van, and the feds were there. We're all around the table, just like you would expect us to be. And we're talking back and forth about what the next steps should be. I said then with the sheriff that I was going to go ahead and pursue the warrants and make sure that we had pretrial detention, and the feds were good with that. And then afterwards, they said they were going to pursue the charges. But the key is the coordination between local, state, and federal authorities. You know, you expect that to happen, but it doesn't always happen.
Right.
And I think that says a lot about the U.S. Attorney here, the FBI, and, of course, the sheriff to bring us all together.
And so what are the possible charges that this person is facing? And I'm just wondering, it was a relatively quick process of finding and detaining him, but it was still 45 minutes after, and he was heading north on I-95.
Yeah, it looks like he was heading back to North Carolina. He was just driving north. Fortunately, we had a good Samaritan who got the license plate number, the make of the vehicle, and he was stopped by Martin County Police, and then he was transferred back to Palm Beach County. As far as charges, you know, I'm speculating here, but it looks like the feds have good grounds to charge him with being an ex-felon in possession of a firearm. That's a serious charge and relatively easy to prove. It's punishable up to 10 years in prison. There's also the aggravated assault against a federal law enforcement officer, the pointing of the AK-47 style rifle at a Secret Service agent, which is being alleged. That can get you up to 20 years in prison. Then there's this federal statute on threats against the former president that can get you up to 5 years in prison, but they'll have to look at the writings, the social media posts of this guy, and the investigation continues.
And so the suspect has a complicated digital footback. He apparently voted for Trump in 2016, and he was against him. There was some donations to Democratic causes. Obviously, this is really too early yet, but is there a way to see any kind of motivational thread in any of the things that you all have found so far?
Or you can explain it as the fact this guy's got a screw loose. I mean, normal people don't do what he did. Doesn't mean he's legally insane under the law. That's a higher burden. The fact that he fled means he knew the difference between right and wrong. It's going to be hard for him to establish an insanity defense. But here's a guy who just goes all out for everything. I mean, he leaves a wake according to reports of creditors behind. He is someone who is seen as potentially volatile. He's out there trying to recruit Afghans to go fight in Ukraine. And what's ironic is that it seems like his great motivation was the war in Ukraine, where he described it as good versus evil. And I agree with him. I think it's easy to see that the Ukrainians are the good guys here. But that same guy also tried to murder the ex-president. That in itself is an evil act. So there's a disconnect there.
David, what about, and you and I have talked about motive in the past and how that plays a part or doesn't in any kind of future prosecutions. The fact that he had those two backpacks, those ceramic tiles, in between the long weapon, and then the GoPro that was already put on to that fence. What does that tell you, and does that have any weight future going?
Yeah, you could charge someone with various crimes, perhaps an attempted murder, without having a shot fired. If you've gone through the planning and have done something substantially to effectuate that. So you don't have to have a shot fired. But because the former president was so far away, 300 to 500 yards away on a different hole, I think it's going to be tough to charge him with a crime against Trump. Much easier to charge him with a crime against a Secret Service agent who apparently saw the rifle pointed at him. That's the key witness here, and that would be perhaps the most serious charge.
Dave Ehrenberg, thank you very much.